Oprah Winfrey, the indomitable spirit of American television, the woman who rose from silence, shame, and unimaginable hardship to become the most powerful voice in global media. From a fragile little girl born in rural Mississippi, raised in poverty, bruised by trauma, and told she would never matter, Oprah clawed her way out of the darkness and carved her name into history as the ultimate storyteller, healer, and truth-teller of our time. Her words, her empathy, her courage, and her relentless will transformed her into a lighthouse for millions searching for hope. A symbol of resilience, wisdom, and unstoppable grace. Yet behind the billion-dollar empire and the radiant smile are wounds that time never fully closed. The childhood violations, the heartbreaks, the battles with self-worth, and the haunting loss of people she loved. Now, when the world believed she had finally reached a place of serenity, a new shadow has begun to gather. Quiet, heavy, and unexpected, pulling Oprah into a storm she never asked for. If Oprah ever inspired you, if her courage ever helped you survive your own darkness, tap like as a tribute to a woman who turned pain into power and suffering into an unshakable legacy. Oprah Winfrey was born on January 29, 1954, in the quiet, hardscrabble stretch of Kosciuszko, Mississippi, a place where dreams seemed too fragile to survive the dust. From the moment she entered the world, life pressed its weight on her small shoulders. Her mother, Vernita Lee, was an unwed teenage housemaid. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, a coal miner who would later become a barber. Nothing about Oprah's beginning promised greatness. If anything, the world around her seemed determined to prove she would never rise above the circumstances she was born into. Her earliest years unfolded on her grandmother's worn-out farm, a place with no indoor plumbing, no comfort, no childhood softness. Yet in that barren soil, her grandmother, Hattie Mae, planted the first seeds of brilliance. A stern, unbending woman, she taught Oprah to read before most children learned to speak clearly. By age 3, Oprah was reciting Bible verses in church, her tiny voice echoing with a confidence far deeper than her years. Congregations stared in awe at the little girl in dresses sewn from potato sacks, unaware that this child, who stood barefoot on dusty floors, would one day become the most influential woman in American media. But the farm, for all its hardships, gave her a kind of structure that would soon vanish. At 6 years old, she was uprooted and sent to Milwaukee, where her mother struggled to survive on a maid's wages. That city, with its cold winters and crowded tenements, delivered her into the darkest chapter of her life. Vernita worked long hours, leaving Oprah in the care of people who saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. Between the ages of 9 and 14, she endured horrors no child should ever know. Repeated abuse from relatives and family acquaintances who stole her innocence and crushed her spirit in silence. The little girl who once lit up church pews with scripture retreated into herself. She broke rules not because she was wild, but because she was drowning. She ran away, skipped school, and searched for escape wherever she could find it. At 14, her pain manifested in the most devastating way. She became pregnant, the result of the abuse she had endured for years. The baby, born prematurely, lived only a short while. His death, the brief life of a child she never had the chance to love, marked the lowest point of her existence. It was a grief so profound that it could have ended her story right there. But fate intervened in the form of a decision. Overwhelmed and unable to help her, Vernita sent Oprah to Nashville to live with her father. And in that moment, everything changed. Vernon Winfrey was the anchor she had been silently praying for. A man of discipline, education, and unwavering belief, he refused to allow Oprah's past to define her future. He required strict routines, nightly book reports, vocabulary lessons, and excellence in every corner of her life. For the first time, structure wasn't punishment, it was salvation. Someone finally saw not her scars, but her potential. Under Vernon's guidance, Oprah began to bloom. She joined the speech team and discovered the fire in her voice. She won contests, earned a scholarship to Tennessee State University, and entered the world of broadcasting while still in high school. At W-Vol, reading the news late into the night, her voice, steady, soulful, unmistakably hers, began to open doors no one from her beginnings was ever meant to walk through. It was the beginning of a metamorphosis, the moment the wounded girl stepped toward becoming the woman the world would one day call a legend. At 19, while still walking the halls of Tennessee State University with borrowed textbooks and a heart patched together from years of hurt, Oprah stepped into a role no one expected a girl with her history to claim. She became the youngest news anchor and the first black female news anchor at Nashville's Wallach TV. It was a historic breakthrough. But more than that, it was the first time Oprah saw a faint shimmer of who she could become. Behind the desk, beneath the studio lights, she wasn't just reading the news. She was learning to turn her own wounds into a strange new kind of strength. Every headline she delivered carried the echo of the storm she had survived. Every story she told became a quiet promise to the broken people watching from living rooms across Tennessee. I understand you. I know pain too. The little girl in potato sack dresses, the child who learned scripture before she could spell, the teenager who cried alone after losing her newborn son. She carried all of them with her. And somehow, instead of swallowing her voice, those memories sharpened it. She began to realize that her story, as heavy as it was, could become a bridge strong enough for others to walk across. She discovered that vulnerability, when spoken aloud, could become a force capable of moving worlds. But destiny rarely moves in straight lines. In 1976, she moved to Baltimore to co-anchor the news at Jace TV, and the cracks began to show. Oprah wasn't built for the cold detachment demanded of traditional anchormen. The tragedies she reported weren't abstract statistics. They were mirrors reflecting her childhood. And when the camera stayed on her a beat too long, tears sometimes surfaced. Executives called her too emotional, too raw, too human. In their eyes, she was flawed. But someone else saw what they couldn't. That her emotional honesty was not a weakness, but her superpower. In 1977, they took her off the evening news and moved her to a morning talk show. People are talking. What management framed as a demotion felt, to Oprah, like a release. Suddenly, she didn't have to pretend. She could feel. She could listen. She could be human. And for the first time, the world leaned in. For 7 years in Baltimore, Oprah learned to create conversations instead of broadcasts. She learned to sit with people's pain and lift it carefully into the light. She learned the art of seeing, truly seeing, the person in front of her. These years were her training ground, her proving fire. But the universe had more in store. In 1984, she was called to Chicago to rescue a dying morning talk show called M Chicago. It was last in the ratings, suffocating under Phil Donahue's dominance. Oprah arrived in January with nothing but a suitcase, a voice, and a truth-telling instinct sharpened by a lifetime of fighting for space in the world. Within months, she had done the impossible. She flipped the ratings, turning the weakest show in the city into the strongest. Within a year, the program was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show, expanded to an hour, and began rewriting the rules of television. Her secret was simple and radical. Oprah didn't interview people. She shared oxygen with them. When guests spoke of trauma, addiction, or heartbreak, she didn't sit above them. She met them exactly where they were. She told them she knew the terrain of pain because she had crawled through it herself. And millions watching at home felt, for the first time, that a television host wasn't performing for them. She was with them. Then, in 1985, a new door swung open. Oprah was cast as Sophia in Steven Spielberg's adaptation of The Color Purple. She had no formal training, but she carried a lifetime of buried fury, strength, and resilience, and it poured into her performance. Her portrayal earned her Academy Award and Golden Globe nominations and introduced her to Hollywood, not as a host, but as an undeniable force. Yet instead of chasing more roles, she chose a more radical path. She chose ownership. In 1986, as The Oprah Winfrey Show entered national syndication, she built Harpo Productions. Oprah spelled backward, a symbolic reclaiming of her narrative. While other hosts remained employees of powerful networks, Oprah became producer, architect, and commander of her own empire. She could tackle taboo subjects, spotlight forgotten voices, and ignite movements that television had long ignored. For 25 years, from 1986 to 2011, The Oprah Winfrey Show became more than just television. It became a cultural heartbeat. She created moments that stamped themselves into history. The thunderous, "You get a car!" giveaway, the 90 million viewer interview with Michael Jackson at Neverland, the intimate conversations with heroes and villains, survivors and dreamers. But beneath every moment, every episode, every revolution she sparked, there pulsed the one truth Oprah never escaped. All of it was built on the ashes of the little girl no one believed would survive. Her triumph was not a miracle. It was a resurrection. By the mid-1990s, Oprah had become something larger than a talk show host. She had become a cultural force. And in 1996, when she launched her book club, she did something no one in television history had ever done. She turned unknown writers into national sensations. She brought literature into living rooms that had never held a hardback book. She made America read again. Not because she demanded it, but because she invited people into stories the way she invited them into her own heart. Her book club became one of the most powerful literary engines in the world, reshaping the publishing industry with a single recommendation. But her show was more than celebrity interviews or viral giveaways. Oprah used her stage the way some people use pulpits, as a place to speak hard truths. She tackled domestic violence, and instead of reporting it from afar, she revealed her own scars. She discussed body image, not as an abstract concept, but as someone who had cried in dressing rooms, who had felt shame seep into her bones. She stood before millions and confessed her darkest struggles with weight, trauma, self-worth. She confronted racism, poverty, addiction, education. Topics daytime TV had long avoided, and turned her show into a living blueprint for American healing. Through Harpo Productions, she carried these stories into film and television. In 1998, she produced Beloved, stepping into the haunting world of Toni Morrison's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. The film struggled commercially, but Oprah didn't care about numbers. She cared about truth. She wanted to confront the wounds of slavery, the generational ghosts that haunted the African-American experience. It was a testament to who she had always been, someone willing to tell stories the world wasn't ready to face. Her influence radiated far beyond her own chair. She elevated the careers of Dr. Phil, Meckersnaz, giving them platforms that became juggernauts of their own. She introduced America to spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle and healers like Iyanla Vanzant, guiding millions toward mindfulness, forgiveness, and personal transformation. She wasn't just shaping television, she was shaping national conversations. Then, in 2011, at the very height of her reign, Oprah did the unthinkable. She ended The Oprah Winfrey Show. She walked away from the throne she had spent 25 years building, and she did it to launch something bigger. Her own network, OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. Her critics laughed. The industry shook its head. Why risk everything? They asked. But Oprah had always lived her life in defiance of what other people believed was impossible. OWN launched into chaos. The ratings crawled. The finances bled. Advertisers pulled away. Pundits declared the network dead on arrival. And for the first time in years, Oprah felt the sting of fear again. The same fear she had felt as a child in Milwaukee. The fear of failing, of losing everything, of not being enough. Yet she dug in. She invested her own money. She rebuilt the programming. She trusted her instincts. And slowly, painfully, the tide shifted. Series like Queen Sugar, Greenleaf, and the Haves and the Have-Nots found their audiences and critical acclaim. OWN became profitable. Oprah had once again done what the world insisted she couldn't. She created a television empire rooted not in spectacle, but in humanity. Alongside her media ventures, she continued acting in projects that carried weight and purpose. In 2013, she appeared in Lee Daniels' The Butler, reminding everyone that her talent extended far beyond the talk show stage. In 2014, she portrayed Annie Lee Cooper in Selma, stepping into the shoes of a woman who fought for the right to vote against impossible odds. And in 2017, she brought cosmic grace to the role of Mrs., which in A Wrinkle in Time, a landmark film for Black female directors and diverse casts. But one of her most powerful performances came in 2018, when she produced and starred in HBO's The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, playing Deborah Lacks, a daughter mourning her mother whose cells changed modern medicine without her consent. Oprah confronted themes of exploitation, racism, and justice that echoed through her own life's mission. Every role she chose was a declaration: our stories matter, even when the world tries to bury them. What made Oprah's decades-long career so extraordinary wasn't the money, the awards, or even the influence. It was the intentionality. Every show, every film, every book, every platform she created was rooted in a desire to uplift, to educate, to heal. She proved that success didn't have to strip away humanity. She proved that entertainment could illuminate truth. Yet the most painful, most public battle she ever fought was the one she never truly escaped: her lifelong struggle with weight and health. She didn't fight it in secret. She fought it under the glare of lights, on magazine covers, in front of millions who analyzed every pound gained, every pound lost. Her body became a battlefield the world felt entitled to judge. But for Oprah, the struggle was never just physical. It was emotional. It was rooted in childhood trauma, in the years when food was the only comfort she had, when the kitchen cabinet was safer than the people meant to protect her. As she climbed into the public eye, the cycle hardened. Emotional eating, weight gain, dieting, losing, regaining, blaming herself, starting again. Endlessly, painfully, publicly. Millions related to her because they saw themselves in her battle. But few understood the depth of the wound behind it, the wound carved in childhood that never entirely healed. And yet, through all of it, Oprah continued to rise. Not despite her pain, but because she refused to let it silence her. In 1988, Oprah created a moment so unforgettable that it would be burned into America's collective memory forever. She stepped onto her stage, pulling a red wagon piled high with 67 pounds of fat, a physical symbol of the weight she had just lost on the liquid Optifast diet. Wearing size 10 Calvin Klein jeans and a triumphant smile that looked like victory but hid exhaustion, she told the world she had finally mastered the demon that had stalked her since childhood. The audience exploded in cheers. America applauded. The cameras immortalized her celebration, and for a brief, shining moment, Oprah believed she had outrun the monster. But her body, her heart, and her history had other plans. Within 2 years, all the weight had returned, and more. The Optifast diet, she would later admit, had been a quicksand solution, a desperate sprint on unstable ground. The severe restrictions sent her body into rebellion, and the old emotional wounds she had never healed came surging back. But the worst pain wasn't the weight gain. It was the humiliation of regaining it under the unblinking gaze of millions. She wasn't just failing privately. She was unraveling publicly, with tabloids dissecting her body as if it were national property. Throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, Oprah's weight became a national storyline, a cruel, relentless cycle of loss and regain. Each fluctuation was photographed, printed, analyzed, mocked. Every tabloid headline was a knife twisting into wounds she had carried since childhood. Yet Oprah refused to retreat into silence. She talked about her struggle openly, even when the world used it against her. She refused to pretend she was stronger than she was. And that honesty, raw, imperfect, human, kept millions of people from giving up on themselves. In 1992, she hired personal trainer Bob Greene, a man who became far more than a fitness coach. He became a mirror, helping her uncover the emotional architecture behind her eating habits. Together they wrote books, created wellness plans, and attempted to redefine health not as punishment, but as self-respect. Bob introduced her to running, a discipline that forced her to confront every voice that once told her she was weak. In 1994, Oprah completed a marathon, a victory that proved her strength could never be measured by a scale. But strength does not erase trauma. In the early 2000s, the weight crept back. Stress from her growing empire, the demands of fame, and old emotional patterns pulled her into another spiral. By 2005, she publicly admitted weighing over 200 pounds. On the cover of O magazine, she appeared heavier than she had been in years. The image was honest, but it was also devastating. Here was one of the most powerful women on earth, a woman who had endured abuse, racism, humiliation, and unimaginable pressure, admitting that food still held a power over her she could not break. The turning point came when she stopped talking about calories and started talking about feelings. She confessed that she ate to numb pain, to silence anxiety, to soften the sharp edges of life. She said food had been her drug, a companion in loneliness, a shield against the world. And by admitting the truth out loud, she gave millions permission to see their own struggles, not as failures of discipline, but as cracks in the heart that needed healing. By 2008, her weight had climbed to 237 pounds, the highest number she had ever seen. In a brutally honest O magazine essay titled, "How did I let this happen again?" Oprah asked the question millions had asked themselves. She took responsibility but acknowledged the complexity of her journey. She revealed she had poured so much energy into her empire, building OWN, managing Harpo, producing films, that she had stopped protecting her health. But beneath the emotional exhaustion, something else was quietly sabotaging her: her thyroid. In 2007, Oprah was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, a condition that slows the metabolism, causes weight gain, fogs the mind, and crushes the spirit with fatigue and depression. Suddenly the pieces made sense: the exhaustion, the stubborn weight, the emotional heaviness, the sense of battling an invisible enemy. The diagnosis explained the physical struggle, but it did not erase the emotional work she still had to do. She began treatment: medication, close medical monitoring, lifestyle changes. She returned to working with trainers and nutritionists, but this time her mission wasn't to shrink her body. It was to heal her relationship with it. She embraced meditation and mindfulness, tools that helped her recognize hunger cues, emotional triggers, and the subtle storms that used to lead her straight to the refrigerator. But the health battles did not stop with weight. They reached deeper into the hidden corners of her life, into the places she had long ignored. Oprah began to understand that her body had been speaking to her for years, through fatigue, through cravings, through chronic stress, begging her to rest, to slow down, to stop carrying the world as though she alone could keep it from falling apart. Her story, once told through numbers on a scale, was evolving into something more profound, a journey toward forgiveness, not of others, but of herself. Because beneath the diets, beneath the public victories and humiliations, beneath the marathon medals and painful magazine covers, there lived the same truth that had shaped her since childhood. Every time Oprah fought her body, she was really fighting her past. And it was finally time to stop fighting. By 2011, the mask of invincibility Oprah had worn for decades finally cracked. Behind the polished interviews, behind the empire she had built with her bare hands, her body was quietly collapsing under the weight of impossible expectations. The launch of OWN, the dream she believed would be her legacy, had turned into a battlefield. Ratings faltered, critics circled, finances bled, and the pressure consumed her like a slow-moving fire. She began experiencing heart palpitations, bone-deep exhaustion, waves of emotional overload that left her breathless. Doctors warned her that she was edging dangerously close to catastrophe. For a woman who had survived beatings, poverty, abuse, and humiliation, it was terrifying to hear that her greatest threat might now come from within. It became a reckoning, a forced pause, a moment where she was confronted with the simple truth she had avoided her whole life. Even Oprah Winfrey has limits. She was forced to pull back, to set boundaries, to decide that her life could no longer be sacrificed at the altar of work. Throughout the 2010s, she tried to rebuild her health from the inside out. No more quick fixes, No more extreme diets, no more promises of miracle transformations. In 2015, she shocked the world by investing in Weight Watchers, becoming a board member and spokesperson. Critics sneered, accusing her of capitalizing on insecurities. But Oprah insisted that this time, her involvement was personal. She wasn't selling a fantasy. She was walking the path herself. She appeared in commercials, raw and unguarded, admitting that the battle with her body was far from over. She was not a victor standing on a hilltop. She was a fellow traveler still trudging through the mud. In 2017, she revealed she had lost more than 40 pounds through WW, exercise, and therapy. Her face glowed with a new kind of peace, not the brittle triumph of her 1988 wagon moment, but something quieter, steadier. She spoke openly about the radical idea of loving her body at every size. She talked about breaking free from the shame that had wrapped itself around her since childhood. The shame of abuse, the shame of eating to survive emotional storms, the shame of having the world comment on her flesh as if it belonged to them. But the journey still bruised her. Menopause, she admitted, changed her body in ways she could not control. Diets that once worked stopped working. Hard-earned progress vanished overnight. Her metabolism slowed to a crawl, her energy dipped, and her frustration soared. Yet instead of hiding, she shared the truth. And millions of women, invisible in their own struggles, finally felt seen. With age came wisdom, and with wisdom came new tools. She strengthened her thyroid treatment, embraced a more plant-forward way of eating, and built a routine of hiking, strength training, and cardio. But more importantly, she leaned into therapy, meditation, and emotional healing. She began to understand that her body was not her enemy. It was an archive of every wound she had ever endured. One of the most devastating revelations she shared was how childhood trauma had shaped her relationship with food. She explained that survivors of abuse often carry extra weight as armor, a shield meant to make them less visible, less vulnerable, less desirable to predators. She admitted that her weight was never just a battle with hunger. It was a battle with memory. Her body had been trying to protect her long after the danger had passed. This understanding softened her approach. For the first time in her life, she treated herself with the compassion she gave to others. As the years passed, Oprah became increasingly vocal about preventive health, regular checkups, medication, blood pressure monitoring, cholesterol management. She saw too many people, especially women and people of color, ignore warning signs because nobody had ever taught them to put themselves first. She made it her mission to tell them, your life matters and your body is worth saving. Then came another evolution. Oprah began discussing weight loss medications, something she had once criticized. But science had changed, and so had she. She acknowledged that for some people, medication was not a crutch but a lifeline. This shift showed a woman unafraid to grow, unafraid to admit she had been wrong, unafraid to reevaluate her beliefs in the pursuit of truth. What makes Oprah's health journey so piercing, so universally felt, is not that she achieved perfection. It's that she never pretended to. She never sold the lie of effortless transformation. Instead, she showed the real, messy, deeply human fight to change lifelong patterns. The victories, the relapses, the grief, the breakthroughs, the days she soared and the days she collapsed. Her vulnerability gave millions permission to be imperfect. She normalized conversations about trauma, emotional eating, aging, hormones, body image, and mental health. She taught the world that even someone powerful, wealthy, admired, and adored can still wake up every morning battling the same silent storms as everyone else. And in doing so, she transformed her greatest struggle into her greatest act of service. Behind the empire, behind the triumphs, behind the woman the world worships as a symbol of hope and transformation, Oprah Winfrey has walked through valleys of grief so dark they could have swallowed her whole. Every accolade she ever earned was carried alongside a private history of heartbreak, losses that forged her empathy, sharpened her wisdom, and left scars she would spend a lifetime learning to touch without breaking. Her first tragedy arrived long before she had words to process it. At just 14, Still a child herself, Oprah gave birth to a baby boy, the consequence of the abuse that had shattered her childhood, and he died shortly after entering the world. She carried that grief in silence for decades, burying it beneath layers of shame and secrecy. The world applauded her achievements without knowing she had once held a life that slipped away in her arms. When Oprah finally revealed the truth in the 1990s, she described the loss not simply as the death of a child, but as the death of innocence. In a society that judged unwed black girls harshly, there was no space for counseling, comfort, or compassion. She was expected to endure it alone, and she did. But the wound shaped her forever. As she rose into fame, her relationship with her mother, Vernita Lee, remained a complicated landscape, marked by old disappointments, long shadows, and distance that no amount of wealth could completely bridge. Vernita had been very young, overwhelmed, unprepared. Oprah never stopped supporting her financially, but the emotional rift lingered, a quiet ache that success could never mend. Their love was real, but it lived alongside unspoken pain. Then came the betrayal that cut deeper than any tabloid headline. In 1989, Oprah's half-sister, Patricia Lee Lloyd, sold private family information, including details about Oprah's teenage pregnancy, to the press. For Oprah, the sting wasn't in the exposure. She had survived public scrutiny before. It was that the wound had come from within her own bloodline. Patricia struggled with addiction, battling demons that money and love could not defeat. The sisters remained estranged until Patricia's death in 2003 at the age of 43. Her passing forced Oprah to confront a painful truth. Even with all her resources, all her power, she could not rescue someone unwilling or unable to rescue themselves. But fate, unpredictable and mercurial, offered Oprah a rare moment of grace in 2010. That year, she discovered she had another half-sister, also named Patricia, given up for adoption by Vernita in 1963. Unlike the first Patricia, this woman had spent her life in foster care, moving from home to home, haunted by questions of identity. When she finally uncovered the truth about her birth family, she did not run to the media. She held the secret close, choosing dignity over exploitation. She simply wanted to know where she came from. When Oprah met her, she was overwhelmed by the quiet strength and integrity of the sister she never knew existed. This Patricia was a paradox, a reminder of the pain in her family's past, yet also a shining example of the goodness that had survived despite it. Oprah embraced her, brought her into the fold, and celebrated the reunion publicly as a miracle in the midst of a lifetime of complicated family ties. Yet even moments of joy could not erase the heaviness of loss that continued to shadow her life. On Thanksgiving Day in 2018, Vernita Lee passed away at age 83. Their relationship had softened in the final years, shaped by forgiveness and the mutual desire to make peace before time ran out. But forgiveness does not erase wounds. It simply allows love to stand beside them. When Oprah laid her mother to rest, she carried both relief and sorrow. Relief that the years of distance had not ended in bitterness, and sorrow for all the tenderness they never found a way to share. These losses, the child she lost, the sister she could not save, the mother whose love was tangled in hardship, the family secrets that unfolded like storms, shaped the Oprah the world now sees. They deepened her compassion, made her a vessel for the stories of others, and sharpened her ability to sit with people in their darkest moments without flinching. The world celebrates her power, but her power was carved from pain. Oprah had long understood that her mother had given her all she could, even if it was never enough to shield her from the storms of childhood. By the time Vernita Lee passed away, Oprah had already walked through years of emotional reckoning. Her mother's death closed a chapter heavy with contradictions. Grief for what was lost, relief for what could finally rest, and reflection on all the bruised places between them. She honored Vernita publicly, but guarded their final days fiercely, knowing some bonds are too tangled, too sacred, too wounded to expose to the world. But the ache of her life did not end with blood relatives. Oprah's heart had been stitched together not just by family she was born into, but by family she chose, and losing them cut just as deeply. One of the most searing losses came in 2014 when Maya Angelou, her mentor, her guide, her spiritual mother, left the world at 86. Oprah met Maya in the 1970s, back when she was still a young woman clawing her way out of her past, still learning how to own her voice. Maya saw her, lifted her, taught her how to stand anchored in dignity even when the world felt hostile and unsteady. Maya called her daughter. Oprah called her mother. And when Maya died, a piece of Oprah's foundation went with her. At the funeral, her voice cracked as she said Maya had taught her how to walk through the world as a woman rooted in purpose. It was not just a eulogy. It was a farewell to the person who had mothered her soul. The universe dealt quieter but equally intimate blows in the form of losing her beloved dogs, Solomon, Sophie, and her golden retrievers who came after. People who had never lived with loneliness underestimated the depth of that grief. But Oprah, who never had biological children, saw her dogs as her babies, the purest love her home ever knew. Their deaths carved new hollows in her heart, reminding her that love, no matter how soft or small, eventually demands payment in pain. In 2018, another kind of loss struck, a creative and moral wound. Oprah had been set to produce and star in a film she deeply believed in, only to discover allegations surrounding one of the key figures involved. Rather than compromise her principles, she made the agonizing decision to walk away completely. It cost her years of work, passion, and emotional investment. But Oprah chose to stand with survivors, even when the sacrifice cut into her personal dreams. It was a reminder that integrity often demands loss. Her journey was also filled with the quieter griefs. The friendships that couldn't survive the gravitational pull of fame, the partnerships that dissolved under pressure, the romantic paths she abandoned for the empire she built. Her love with Stedman Graham endured since 1986, steady and unconventional. Yet she openly acknowledged the price she paid for choosing career over traditional family life. She had no regrets, only an understanding that every road taken casts a shadow over the roads left behind. Professional heartbreaks wounded her too. Beloved, the film she had poured her soul into in 1998, received praise but was crushed at the box office. For Oprah, it wasn't just a commercial failure. It was the loss of a message she believed the world needed. She mourned not the money, but the impact she hoped it would have. And then came one of the darkest chapters of her career, the early collapse of OWN. She had ended her legendary talk show, a show that defined her life, to build something bigger. Yet the network stumbled, bled money, and attracted harsh criticism. Shows she believed in were canceled. Staff she cared for were let go. At night, she lay awake, questioning whether she had gambled away the legacy she spent decades building. She often described that period as a spiritual low point, not because she feared failure, but because she felt responsible for disappointing others. And woven through it all was the deepest grief that few speak about, the loss of privacy. The world devoured her life, her weight, her choices, her relationships, her family tragedies, as if she belonged to them. Oprah grieved the version of herself that once belonged only to her. The girl who could walk down a street unnoticed. The woman who could make mistakes without headlines. Every loss, private, public, devastating, or quiet, shaped the Oprah the world knows today. A woman whose greatness was carved not from ease, but from endurance. In the early years of her fame, Oprah shared her life as freely as she breathed, never imagining that every confession, every mistake, every fragile truth would one day be dissected under a microscope held by millions. She did not yet understand the hunger of the world, the way tabloids would turn her weight into headlines, the way distant relatives would trade her secrets for quick money, the way strangers would judge the contours of her relationships as if they had lived them. Losing privacy was its own kind of death. The death of ordinary life, the death of anonymity, the death of being allowed to learn and stumble quietly. There is a unique sorrow in realizing that even your pain is no longer yours alone. In recent years, Oprah has begun to speak openly about a deeper, quieter ache, anticipatory grief. the kind that settles over you when you know time is beginning to steal the people you love. She has talked about the fear of losing Stedman, her steadfast partner of nearly 4 decades, the man who has walked beside her through storms and triumphs alike. She worries for the dear friends who have aged alongside her. She mourns the fading strength in her own body, the slowing metabolism, the limitations she never imagined she'd have to accept. Aging has forced her to look directly at her own mortality, a confrontation she once avoided by drowning herself in work. What makes Oprah extraordinary is not that she escaped grief, but that she learned to alchemize it. Every loss became a teacher. Every betrayal became a mirror. Every heartbreak became an invitation to expand her compassion. She refused to let sorrow harden her. Instead, she allowed it to carve her deeper, widening her capacity to understand the suffering of others. For 25 years on television, she created an altar of empathy where millions could lay down their pain. She welcomed grieving parents, survivors of violence, people who had endured unthinkable tragedies, and she held space for them. She brought psychologists, spiritual leaders, and grief counselors onto her stage, anchoring American culture in conversations about mourning, trauma, and resilience long before the world was ready to talk about such things. She normalized the chaos of grief, the nonlinear path of healing, the truth that mourning is not weakness but evidence of love. Her willingness to expose her own wounds shattered the myth that success brings immunity from suffering. She showed the world that you can build empires and still cry alone in the dark. That fame cannot shield you from heartbreak. That wealth cannot resurrect the dead. Her honesty made her human again in the eyes of millions, even as her life became more extraordinary than she had ever dreamed. Loss taught her about impermanence, about time's ruthless speed, about the urgency of saying, "I love you," before the chance disappears. Her legendary generosity, the scholarships, the homes, the cars, the gifts, was rooted in this understanding. She knew that money was meaningless compared to human connection. She understood that celebration should not be postponed. She learned to honor people while they were alive, not just after they were gone. These experiences with grief deepened her spiritual hunger. She spent decades seeking wisdom across traditions, reading Buddhist texts, exploring Christian theology, interviewing spiritual teachers from around the world, weaving together her own mosaic of beliefs. Her spirituality became less about dogma and more about truth, healing, legacy, and peace. Now, at 70, Oprah stands in the rarest chapter of her life, one where reflection does not slow her impact but refines it. She divides her time between her sanctuaries, the 42-acre Montecito estate she calls the Promised Land, a place of gardens, walking paths, meditation spaces, and quiet corners where she can finally breathe, her refuge in Maui and her homes in Telluride and Chicago. Each one is a reminder of how far she has come from the poverty-ridden shacks of Mississippi. Her days are deliberate and gentle. She wakes around 6 a.m. for meditation and spiritual reading, tending to her soul before tending to the world. She hikes the hills around her property, lifts weights to protect her aging bones, and focuses on mobility and heart health rather than appearance. She is still the CEO of Harpo Productions, still a major force behind OWN, but she has stepped back from the grind that once consumed her life. At this stage, Oprah is no longer chasing mountains. She is tending the garden of a life she fought to survive long enough to enjoy. Today, in the late chapters of her extraordinary life, Oprah Winfrey stands not as a fading icon but as a woman in full bloom, a figure who has learned to weave purpose, grief, wisdom, and joy into a single, steady light. One of her most visible roles now is her partnership with Apple TV+, where she continues to create work aligned with her deepest values. Her book club lives there too, reborn and revitalized, offering intimate conversations with authors. In these quiet exchanges, Oprah is at her purest. Piercing questions, deep listening, drawing out truths that remind the world why stories matter, why words still save lives. Her book club remains a seismic force in publishing. When Oprah chooses a book, it does not rise, it ascends. She treats this power not as prestige, but as responsibility, selecting works that nourish the soul, confront injustice, or illuminate corners of life we often ignore. And she brings these same values to her arena tours, where she sits with thought leaders to explore wellness, purpose, resilience, and the art of living meaningfully. At the center of her personal life stands the friendship that has carried her through 4 decades, Gayle King. They speak multiple times a day, a testament to a bond that has survived fame, distance, heartbreak, and reinvention. Their relationship is a living portrait of female friendship at its highest form: loyal, grounding, brutally honest, and utterly unbreakable. And then there is Stedman Graham, the quiet anchor in her storm, her partner for nearly 40 years. They never married, never conformed, and never apologized for building a love that worked on its own terms. Philanthropy remains one of Oprah's greatest callings, her proudest achievement. The Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa continues to bloom. Built in 2007 for gifted girls from disadvantaged backgrounds, the Academy has produced graduates who attend universities around the world. Oprah mentors them fiercely, visiting often, guiding their paths. She considers these girls not simply students, but daughters of her heart, a legacy carved from hope. Her generosity stretches far beyond South Africa. She has funded scholarships at HBCUs, supported charter schools, strengthened literacy programs, and responded to crises with compassion grounded in action. When the 2023 Maui fires devastated communities, Oprah didn't just send money. She walked into shelters, listened to survivors, and helped create a fund providing direct financial relief. She believes in showing up, in touching hands, not headlines. Health remains central to her life's work. She speaks candidly about aging, menopause, preventive care, and her ongoing journey with weight, a subject she refuses to hide behind. She encourages women to trust their bodies, to demand proper medical care, to speak openly about the changes that society often whispers about. Her vulnerability continues to be a bridge for millions. Spiritually, Oprah has become even more expansive. She identifies as Christian but draws wisdom from many traditions, believing that truth is vast and God is larger than any single doctrine. Prayer, meditation, and stillness guide her days. She studies voraciously. Books, courses, workshops, teachings, feeding a curiosity that refuses to dim with age. Her mind remains as open as her heart. Legacy has become a conscious act. Oprah is archiving thousands of hours of interviews, cultural conversations, and personal reflections, determined to leave behind a map of lessons for future generations. Yet even as she builds her legacy, she stays grounded in the ordinary. She drives herself, shops at farmers' markets, laughs loudly, and keeps close the people who loved her long before the world knew her name. She has not retired, not truly. Instead, she calls this phase integration, a time when everything she has lived, learned, survived, and created folds into one clear purpose. She writes more, produces more, speaks with intention, and asks, each morning, what she can offer the world that will outlive her body. At 702, Oprah Winfrey is no longer striving to prove anything. She stands wholly in herself, knowing what matters, what doesn't, and how precious every remaining moment is. This is Oprah now, a woman who survived brutality and betrayal, who alchemized grief into generosity, who built an empire without losing her soul, who continues to rise not through perfection, but through truth. A woman who turned her pain into purpose, and in doing so, gave millions permission to heal.